Welcome to another episode of Truth or Trend. I've got Dr. V with me today, and what we'd like to do is get together every week and talk about all kinds of things health related, trying to help you all figure out and critically think for yourself what's going on in your body, what's truly happening, and is this new thing that's been advertised something you should mess with? It is a scoundrel. We're talking about scoundrels today. That's trying to fool you. And today we're going to round out. I don't know if we've hit all the headaches so far, but Dr. V is the author of an awesome book called The Headache Advantage. And I have been giving this out to more people than any book this year by far, and talking about it more than any other book by far, because it helps you learn from your headaches what's going on in your body. And that's such a cool thing. And Dr. V, we've got one headache we haven't hit yet today. And what's that headache?
The colon headache, the whole head headache.
Yeah.
And yes,
Right.
as we try to describe them, it's usually the hardest one to describe, because
Ah,
it is the whole head, right? And people
okay.
can usually say, well, it's right here, doc, or it's here, or it's right-sided, it's left-sided. That's a little more obvious, it's a little bit more distinct when we talk about it. But when I say, where's your head pain? They go, the whole
Okay.
thing hurts.
Hey,
And sometimes it'll pound. So ultimately that's where it is. And just to kind of give it the Dustin interview start. Wow, it's gonna be a good day, huh?
that's a great start.
But really, I mean, it starts out with, do you have thumb pain? Does your thumb hurt? Do you
Uh,
have pain in the low back? Do you have pain on the outside of your legs? Do you have digestive problems, right? Do you have pain all the way around your head? Feels like a headband. Well, this is me trying to be Dustin. It's not just in your head. So these are all commonalities, or the commonality for all of this is large intestine. And so this is all the body trying to get your attention, saying, hey, warning light, your colon's not functioning properly. And if we don't do something about it, it's catastrophic, right? It affects everything. And we used to think of the colon as the entryway into the outside environment. Really, the colon is our connection from what we eat to what goes into the body, and how that functions. So, and then now I mean, that was the early days. Now it's like, then they started saying, well, the gut is the second brain.
right.
Now, I mean, it's almost starting to trump the brain for a priority.
Sure. Yeah.
Because all neurotransmitters affect what happens in the gut. The gut makes most of the nutrients, or the neurotransmitters makes 50% of the melatonin to help us sleep and recover. 50% that's made in the gut. Serotonin is made in the gut. The B12 to break dopamine down is made from lactobacillus organisms in the gut. I mean, this is just a massive subject, and it has gone bananas in the literature lately, and to the point now they're talking about the bacteria in your gut is an organ unto itself.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, that's just it, right? We're talking about a lot of things, and we are talking literally trillions of things that could
Yeah,
be
yes.
within your gut that we're talking about. So, when you have somebody who comes in and they have this thumb pain, talk about that a little bit. What's going on there? Is it a tight?
Right.
Is it a pain? Is it what? That's an interesting trigger, or a warning light.
Right, right,
That
right, right. And
going
great
on.
question. And it's pretty much anywhere on the thumb. If anywhere on the thumb hurts, first thing we're looking at is colon. And the mechanism there is large intestine 4. One of the most common acupuncture points is right where the crease ends. That's large intestine 4. And that is one of the most profound points in acupuncture, one of the top five ultimately. And that's why the home remedy is, rubbing the thumb if you have a headache. That
Mhm.
actually will give some relief if you have that whole headband type of a headache. The other good news with that is if you have low back pain, which means pain in the flank, there's a muscle called the quadratus lumborum muscle there, attaches from the iliac crest to the bottom of the ribs, little quadratus, so it's a square shaped muscle in there that spazzes out when the large intestine spazzes, if you will. And
Okay.
so if you're having that low back pain that, oh, it hurts when I move and so on, yeah, first thing we think is, oops, what did I eat? Oh, darn it, I had wheat last night, or I ate corn. These are the foods that are typically going to trip up the colon.
Right.
But the timeout, sort of the temporary fix for you is that large intestine 4 acupuncture point. So there's your value add for listening today is, you have that low back pain, you can get through the day, or go do your workout by rubbing that acupuncture point. But the learning tool for you is to dig back or think back to what you ate that whacked your digestion ultimately.
So you mentioned wheat and corn as two of the biggest whackers of your digestion. As out. Now,
Right.
I love these terms. Now, is that so? That's something somebody's going to have done yet, like maybe last night for dinner, and they're going to have a headache the next day, or are they going to have a
Mhm.
headache right away? Is that headache going to come, within an hour, or does it matter?
It's fairly quick, but yeah, out within a couple hours. It
Yeah,
usually will come on. And to back up a little bit, the reason I had to write the book about headaches is that headaches really tell us the priority. I mean, we could have, five compromised glands or organs, but the location of the head pain tells us the priority. So for those of you that are listening, watching this, that have that whole head headache, the other challenge is colon is kind of downstream from digestion. We've got stomach, we've got chewing called
right,
mastication. We've got chewing that starts the whole process and all the enzymes we secrete there. So it starts there and then goes into the stomach. Then we've got gallbladder, we've got small intestine. These are all north of the large intestine. In other words, first above it. So if one of those glands or organs isn't functioning, then the colon often will manifest it as well.
right.
So all that to empower the person. If you have the whole head headache, but you also have a right-sided headache, for example, then thinking upstream, getting the gallbladder fixed might be the solution for your whole head, your colon problem as well. Or if you have a left-sided headache and a whole head headache, we may need to fix the stomach first to allow the colon then to function properly. Because if we're chasing our tail trying to do, probiotics and that sort of stuff to heal the gut or fix the function of the gut, but the problem's upstream, the food's not getting digested properly from the stomach, then it's for naught, basically.
I love that you said that. In fact, I've heard it said many times. The problems in the South usually start in the North when it comes to your digestion. And you
Right.
mentioned probiotics, and a lot of people think when they've got something going in their colon, they think, "Oh, great, I'll just take a probiotic and that'll fix it." Right?
For sure. Right. Right.
Exactly what you're saying there is why that may not be the case for those listening who've tried probiotics and you're not
Mhm.
getting the results. You haven't really fully rectified what maybe was an offline up in the stomach or the gallbladder, or even like you said, chewing the food wasn't
Mhm.
done appropriately for that person.
Rectified. Are you putting puns in there now?
I'm working on it, man.
Getting the rectum in there now. The definition for rectum, damn near killed him. Rectum, damn near killed him.
Well, it's funny you should say that. Because honestly, when I'm working with somebody, that is like the most important experience that they need to have for me to know that we can move forward with their health is that they're having a bowel movement every day, right?
At least.
Exactly, at least once a day. And that is, it's amazing to me how many people still come in and they think it's normal, totally normal to have one every other day or one every 3 days.
Right.
That should always be a message to you. If you skip a day, something happened, and we would be wise to go back and figure out what that is and get things rocking and rolling, right?
For sure. And yeah, and at least one a day. Really,
Oh,
the ideal cadence is one after 3 times a day. After each primary meal, we should be eliminating what we've digested from 20 hours prior. Speaking of, in the early days before I was totally anti-corn, I used to call it the corn test,
yeah,
eat corn and see when it shows up in the stools.
right,
Because transit time should be 20 hours plus or minus 4. So
right.
if you eat corn and you don't see that for another week, you got problems, my friend.
Yeah,
So just imagine all that fecal materials sitting in there reabsorbing. So then that puts all kinds of stress on the liver because we're reabsorbing those toxins that should have been out 20 hours later. They get reabsorbed, then the liver has to re-detoxify them, goes back through the whole digestive system, the bloodstream, and then doesn't come out again. So it just round and round cycles through. Pretty soon we got dark circles under the eyes and feeling like doo-doo and brain fog and low back pain and thumb pain,
right.
arthritis ultimately.
Yeah,
Arthritis, incidentally, I mean, I just lectured 12 hours on autoimmune conditions. Arthritis starts as a leaky gut problem. I mean, and most conditions do. Most of those that was bulk of the premise of that 12-hour discussion we had last weekend was that, I mean, it starts as a leaky gut problem. Things are getting through the blood. I mean, you think of, you have a single cell layer between the intestinal lining and the bloodstream. I mean, that's not much between poop and blood,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
And so if
exactly.
that single cell layer is permeable, where things then slip through, that triggers the immune system. Pretty soon we've got our, we got achy joints, we have brain fog's an early symptom. Brain fog will start potentially right after we eat, in that case. But it triggers the immune system, all that inflammation. And we got, C-reactive protein and sed-rate and all these other, blood markers that are up. Everybody says, oh, inflammation is a villain. Well, why?
Right.
Go upstream, go north of the inflammation. Why isn't inflammation there,
Pouring fuel on the fire. Right, exactly.
Right,
So what is
right.
pouring fuel on this fire, Dr. V? Why are people having leaky gut? What is destroying that gut lining? And is it
Yeah.
acted fecal matter, or there's a whole list of things that are causing destruction?
Right. And so start with kind of the gas pedal, if you will, for elimination is poor fat metabolism slows elimination. So that's the person that's not going on a fairly regular basis. Typically, they're going to have, bags under the eyes. Conversely, undigested carbohydrates or yeast causes fast digestion. So if a person has IBS, right, yeast causes the ileocecal valve and the valve of Houston, the two primary kind of throttles for elimination.
Yeah,
That valve opens up when there's yeast there. That has its own set of symptoms. That's going to be neck pain. That's going to be like, I feel like I need an adjustment.
right,
Chiropractors, that one-sided neck pain, the sacroiliac joint pain, which is kind of pain in the tailbone area. Those are signs of yeast overgrowth. And bicep tendonitis, these are signs of yeast overgrowth. And so that means too many carbohydrates. Those carbohydrates aren't metabolizing properly. Women, estrogen sets the stage for that carb. I mean, think of, women start craving carbs during, hormone surges of ovulation and menstruation, so that, I can't get enough carbohydrates, 2 weeks in and 4 weeks in on menstruation. Then that's estrogen metabolism issues. That's going to open the door, set the stage for yeast overgrowth. So that's the gauge. So yeah, if we're not digesting those fats well, then that poop sits in there and it gets reabsorbed and sets all those up. So that's part of the problem. And then the toxic metals are like the glue. Toxic metals deteriorate the gut lining, so it's going to make it more permeable. So if we're exposed to aluminum from an immunization, for example, or mercury from those old fillings, or mercury in our fish that we're eating. These things are going to compromise the intestinal lining. Cadmium from the pesticides that's on the fish, or not the fish, but sorry, the vegetables and so on. So these are things that are going to compromise the intestinal lining. Conversely, with stress, bummer,
yeah,
I'm speaking to you from Southern California, where we're all a bunch of stress junkies. I mean, you get the same thing in, all the metropolis areas where we're mostly congregating. We're a
right.
bunch of stress junkies filling, overpacking our schedules. So that doesn't give the intestine time to basically heal in between as well. So those are primary mechanisms to set up that leaky gut concern.
Let's hit that yeast one a little harder then. Okay, so
Right.
obviously a lot of things that are contributing that you said overconsumption of carbohydrates is going to lead to that, obviously sugar, but you said something
Mhm.
about estrogen, and I don't think a lot of people are aware of the estrogen yeast connection. Can you
Right.
kind of bring that one home a little bit more for everybody?
Yeah, and that was a fairly new discovery for me as well. Especially as I got into, some of trying to figure out the estrogen triggers in the world. It started with, it's been published lately that, fish are becoming infertile, frogs are infertile. There's a, big study that talks about, infertile frogs in the nation and so on. And I thought, oh, it's because women are, over the pill and they're putting the pill in the toilet,
Yeah,
that sort of thing. But the actual mechanism there is people, so many gaps. I mean, something like 70% of the female population, especially childbearing years, are on synthetic hormones. And so those synthetic hormones then get peed out. And that's why it's all in. So I could be drinking like I just did. I could be
yeah,
drinking water and it's got estrogen in it,
right.
or drinking water out of a plastic bottle that was sat in the car on a 90-degree day. Those are all things, there's plastic or fight these um, exogenous estrogen sources. And so, then that's puts stress on the liver. Ultimately, that sets the stage for cancers, unfortunately, because of the methylation and the P450 and glucuronidation. To throw out my 50-cent words, those pathways in the liver that should be breaking down estrogen.
Yep. I'm going to say they're
But
75 cents. Those are really good words, actually. But it's interesting. I just want to talk. This weekend, I did a longevity talk in Mineral Wells about this, and this one lady asked about hormones, and I was like, okay, you ready? Right? Are you ready?
You're not
Most
going to want to
people
hear it.
do not want to hear about this excess estrogen situation, but it is a real thing. This is not a
Right.
trend, right? This is
Mhm.
this is something that is truly happening. The trend is, and we've talked about this on other episodes, that everybody's taking hormones and thinking it's
Mhm.
totally safe and totally fine.
Right.
But the truth is we have way, way, way too much exposure to exogenous estrogens. And so, but what I want to hear again is how does that connect to the yeast, right? So how is the
Yes. Mhm.
estrogen in the yeast?
So we get the puts the stress on the liver, but ultimately the main mechanism there is estrogen is acidifying. It's acidifying to the gut. So it creates a more acidic environment in the gut, which eating sugar does also, right? Makes the gut more acidic. So then the yeast flourishes, right? So it's all that pH balance again. Gallbladder alkalizes, minerals alkalize. That
Mhm.
keeps us more calm, cool, and collected and stable. Whereas
Right.
the sugars and the estrogens acidify, so that then the yeast overgrows and sets up those challenges.
So is it hyperacidic then? Because we do want the colon to be slightly acidic, right?
Right.
6.8 is really the pH that we're going for. And sometimes people are overly alkaline and we need that. But you're saying that the estrogen is driving it even more acidic, making the environment in the colon not even hospitable to acidophilus, which would be acid probiotics, right?
Right,
Okay.
right, right,
Oh, interesting.
right. So another tangent sidebar there is that also becomes relevant when we're looking at supplements, right? So
Right.
most capsules are designed to dissolve in a more alkaline environment, like the gut, right? So whereas tablets are intended to be chewed, functionally, especially from a standard process, a quality product
Mhm.
is intended to be absorbed higher up in the digestive system. So I chew all my tablets. I lose compliance often because most of the stuff you and I are representing does not have flavoring in it. There's no red dye. There's no
Right.
there's no sugar in it.
Right.
But
Right.
I chew all my tablets and swallow the capsules because again, capsules are designed to either dissolve in the small intestine or the large intestine in general, where we want, for example, those probiotics.
Right.
So we want those to dissolve in that 6.8 environment, whereas the stomach is 1 or 2. It's
Right.
massively acidic to break down to lyse those proteins into smaller structures so that they're not so triggering on the immune system, and so that we can get the individual amino acids and build them up as we need them in the environment ultimately, right? Mhm.
So yeah, and what is the answer for somebody who is becoming hyperacidic due to an estrogen dominant situation? Is it just more minerals, or is it helping the body clear out the excess estrogen, or both? Or what do you find is the
Yeah.
top thing that they need to focus on when they're in that situation?
So all three, the thing we need to add to that is breaking it down in the liver. So is it the fact that the liver's not breaking them down properly? I mean, our livers are under stress. It's a toxic world we live in, unfortunately. I mean,
Yeah.
I go for a ride to take care of my health and I'm breathing toxic air, I'm breathing car exhaust.
Yep.
We're kind of in a can't win situation, so we need to limit our exposures. So ultimately, is the system acidified because you're taking the birth control pill, because you're taking it could be bioestrogen, biocompatible. That's kind of the buzz term to get away from the fact that these things were massively carcinogenic, right? And so now the term is biocompatible, or these terms to try to sedate the
Dangers.
trigger. Yeah, well, the
Yeah.
trigger that it is for people.
Mhm.
So anyway, so ultimately it's not. I mean, I had a patient that was using the creams, but I feel so much better when my skin's better when I'm on it, blah blah blah. I'm like, it's stressing your liver. We have problems here. I think I told this story on one of the other podcasts. I kept trying to dance around it and treating her, to help her liver, help her get along with her hormones. Now we had to treat her for breast cancer because, my predictions came true, unfortunately.
Mhm.
So, with those types of experiences, I get a little bit more and more passionate about, like, no,
Yeah. Yeah.
we can't dance with this.
Well, I mean, it's no accident that 70 to 80% of all breast cancers are estrogen receptor positive. And
Right.
any oncologist, if they have a patient who has been diagnosed with cancer, they're going to immediately take them off of hormone therapy immediately,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
It's shocking to me that so many people are still fighting for this to not be a problem because they feel good short term, right?
Exactly.
Make you feel good short term. We've talked about that before too, right? Oh, makes you feel good right now. That doesn't mean it's a great medicine, you know? All of these things have a cost, and a lot of it's to the liver, like you're saying, for sure. So, okay, so now we're working on getting that estrogen back, dialed back, and cleared out. We still have this. Does that solve the yeast problem, or do we need to do more for the yeast typically in these situations?
So, I mean, in my world, I muscle test to see whether it's the hormones that are the priority or whether it's the sugar pancreas problem. So, I mean, we talked about that at the seminar, prioritize, and those, that means a gentle rub over the reflex, muscle testing clinicians listening to this, a gentle rub is a net parasympathetic response. It tells us, okay, if I fix the liver, does this problem go away? So, okay, the liver is where the weakness is, that we're not metabolizing that estrogen properly. Or if I, recognize that it's something they're consuming, that's causing estrogen, causing the ovaries to go run amok, then I'm going to say, all right, what are you doing for HRT? How are you manipulating your hormones? So I prioritize that way. I mean, it's going to be, if you don't have the ability to, or a clinician that's, trained to do that, then it's going to be some soul searching. Am I taking hormones, right? Or am I drinking from a, plastic water bottle? Incidentally, BPT, or was it BPA, the plastics, everybody at BPA, most of the bottles are now BPA free, but they're using BPS, which is also,
Right.
estrogenic. So, there's all of that. So it's a soul searching. I mean, recognize the triggers. It starts there, kind of like we did with the colon. Oops, I have thumb pain, I have low back pain. Or headache? What did I just eat? Right. So same thing. If I've got these carb sugar cravings, what's triggering it? Am I eating too much sugar? That's an easy duh. Yeah, that's right. I ate dessert, or I celebrated my kid's birthday last night, or whatever, people do that way. That's an overt, easy, hopefully easy change. The hard part is cutting it out, because yeast causes carb sugar cravings in the first place. I mean, yeast wants to be fed, right?
Yep.
And so it's going to say, create sugar cravings so that we can continue to perpetuate the life cycle of the pesky yeast, which is one of the other big triggers for leaky gut.
Right.
So yeast compromises the intestinal lining, and then we get or achy joints and so on. Feel sluggish, need a little sugar pick me up, and perpetuates the cycle again, right? And the chronic neck pain. So we have all those mechanisms. It starts with soul searching. Did you eat wrong? What are the triggers in your life?
Right. Now there is a point, a yeast point, right? Where it's
I use a knife edge over the sternum.
knife edge for the sternum. There it is.
Yeah, so
Right.
where you're pointing, the bicep tendon is going to be tender when there's yeast overgrowth.
Okay.
So, front shoulder pain, I used to get that shoulder pain there, doing incline press,
Right.
or those types of activities, throwing exercises that hurts in there. That bicep tendon gets irritated because it's a referred pain area from that ileocecal valve on the right, or valve of Houston on the left, opening up, causing that referred pain in the bicep tendon.
Got it. Okay. But when you're muscle testing, this is the point uses a knife edge over the sternum.
Knife edge over the lower sternum. So think of the yeast test that, the old school yeast test that you take a glass of water and spit a nice loogie in there before you go to bed. And then when you check it in the morning, if there's tentacles, like octopus tentacles from that's an indication of yeast. So that's kind of the thought process when I use that knife edge, is those tentacles of that yeast, kind of a
Right.
fun visual.
Yeah, very fun. And so in those cases, what are you reaching for to help them resolve this overgrowth of yeast, right? I was thinking when you were talking earlier about, it could be heavy metals that could be creating leaky gut. It could be the yeast. The GI adsorb, that adsorbent, zeolite, clenophthalate clay can be a really awesome way to help pull all of that garbage out.
For
Uh,
sure.
what else are you reaching for when
Yeah,
you're
I mean, that was a good one. And then the biofilm probalance is fairly new to the offering as well. Really good for the yeast, and the biofilm, breaking down that biofilm to make it more so that we can get to it and treat it. Zymex capsules, we have three, in the SB line, we've got three products that are, Zymex named. Makes it a little confusing for people, but they all have very different mechanisms or very different functions too. So Zymex capsules are anti-yeast. Zymex 2 is anti-parasitic. So if we're not digesting fats well, that's going to set the stage typically for parasites to flourish, because parasites like poop for food.
right, right,
So Zymex 2 will help with that. I mean, even if you want to just do Zymex 2 around the full moon, because they do tend to get more active. It's a good time to go after them. So we got Zymex 2 as an anti-parasitic. Then we've got the Zymex wafers. That's for the person that gets gas after they eat. That's more of a bowel detoxifier, kind of like the BioClear that you were talking about. Sorry. Never mind. Kind of like the we used the
Yeah,
binder.
yeah,
Yeah.
which
GI
is
adsorb, right.
adsorbent clay. Yeah, that they had
Right.
a long time trying to find.
And then we have GI stability, which is the prebiotic probiotic to restore the gut balance in there as well.
Right, right. What about herbs? Are there any herbs that you find you have to bring in when somebody's having a yeast, like cat's claw? Do you use that one ever for that? I mean,
Yeah.
I find it can be very helpful for those individuals.
Okay,
They
cool.
get
I have not used cat's claw. And thanks for that prompting.
no problem. I mean, obviously,
Um,
garlic is going to be another, very powerful tool to help balance
right,
overgrowth.
right, right. Oh, what am I? PD podarco is, is another herb that's very anti-yeast, right? And then caprylic acid comes from coconut, derived from coconut. Caprylic acid is another anti-yeast herb as well.
Yep.
So yeah, those are in a lot of the typical off-the-shelf type of anti-yeast products for sure.
Oil of oregano, the gut flora complex from meaty herb can be very helpful.
Right. And that was nice because it's anti-parasitic as well. So we get a
Yeah,
twofer when it's got some prebiotic to some degree in there as well. So
yeah.
call it a threefer.
That's reefer. Absolutely. Echinacea too. I mean, echinacea does have antifungal properties, especially for the stealth fungus. So
Nice.
or
Yeah, yeah.
if
Right.
that's what's coming up from those are the things I'm checking for people.
Right. I mean, weed, feed, and seed, right?
Right.
I mean, to
Well,
coin the great Carrie, right? Carrie Bone talks about, we need to get the bad bugs out. We need to feed the good bugs, which is seed. And weed feed and seed and keep the environment healthy,
right,
so the good bugs continue to flourish.
right, right.
Ultimately.
So how
Right.
quickly can somebody get resolution of this kind of headache when you get it right?
Well, the thumb is going to resolve it almost immediately,
Okay. Okay.
somewhat temporarily, but we want to get to the mechanism, get to the cause
Right.
so that we learn stop eating corn. The other two foods that we didn't talk about that are potentially food triggers is going to be dairy. Dairy is going to be a big compromise on the colon for a lot of people. And then beef, if you're an A blood type, 44% of you are A blood, or 42% of you are A blood types. Beef is going to cause constipation and kind of wreck the immune system, make it very virally vulnerable. So those are a couple of food triggers for people. Yeah, so that's another good place to start. We talk about wheat, corn, dairy, and for O blood types, they need beef. They need the methionine and protein in there. But the A blood types are going to have all kinds of intestinal problems, which is going to lead to low back pain. So it starts, oops, I ate that. Understand the mechanism that, as we talked about, it can be within hours, typically in that situation. Even though theoretically the colon's, almost 20 hours after we eat it, but the tongue starts the process immediately. There's nerve receptors on the tongue that tell the brain, hey, I've got these vitamin A coming. Let's send it to the eyes. So there's gustatory nerves that they're RNA receptors. That's why we want to chew our food. That's why I chew my tablets. It tells my brain, hey, nutrition coming. Get the guards ready to take it to the right place. So that's all in there. Um, what were we talking about? So how fast can it go away? We do the appropriate treatment. I expect the headaches to be gone before they leave the office, ultimately. Yeah, I mean, it should be an immediate response. And that's very profound from a learning perspective to know, that's how I ended up writing the book, because that gave me that 100% confidence that if I treat the colon, that large intestine headache is going to be gone before they leave.
Right.
There's no question in my mind whether or not that's a trigger. I don't, whether research justifies it or not. My research is my N of one is, 100% right there.
Right. Well, and here,
Mhm.
but what I'm trying to get to, I think, is a lot of times what for the practitioners out there, what a patient wants to know is how much, how many, how long, right, do I need to do this? And
Tolerance.
sometimes people they'll only do something until the pain is gone, right? If you rub their thumb and their headache goes, they're like, oh, I don't need a pill, right? But
Right.
no, you still need to
Hmm.
resolve this, or rectify this imbalance that is happening. And that can take time, right? I think that's the thing that
Right.
the setting the expectation for the person, because they'll be like, well, you made my headache go away. Now I got to constantly having to massage this spot. That's what I'm trying to bring home is that there is going to take some time to reestablish the right microbiome and the right environment so that you're not susceptible to that pain coming back.
Right.
You're not setting yourself up so that's something you have to keep dealing with over and over and over again.
Right.
So I
We go
usually,
ahead.
I was going to say, I usually tell people, it could be 2 to 3 months, right? Before you can do it. It could be more. I mean,
Right.
you're looking up how long it takes for your body to reset from just one round of antibiotics. It's a year, right? If you're not
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
anything, it just in a natural course to be able to come back to what you were supposed to be. And what we're talking about, obviously, is helping accelerate that process, right? Trying to bring in
Right.
probiotics, create the environment, right? So we can do that quicker. But even in the best conditions, I think, just because the pain goes away doesn't mean that the job is done, right? We still need a
Right.
couple months to really get things back to where they're supposed to be.
Right. And so to continue with what you're saying there, we spend the year rebuilding, we're going to have better tolerance. So you go
Right. Right.
splurge that one time, it's not going to be quite the blowout, right? But if you're barely hanging on, you're standing on the precipice of the cliff, it doesn't take much to jump over, right? And to be gone. But if you've got plenty of margin there, you've been making good choices. I mean, so many analogies. I mean, like parenting, if the kid made a mistake now, then oops, hey, learn from it, Johnny. But if it's they're characterized by it, we need to get in there, lean a little harder on them, right? So that's the rebuilding over the month, over the year to get the gut healthy, so that a little indiscretion, then you go splurge and celebrate your anniversary, or whatever excuse you need to eat sugar. You can get away with that one meal potentially, but if you're already just barely hanging on, that one meal could be enough to throw you over the cliff. I mean, I call it post-it Paul. It's like if the guy if you have the check engine light on your dash, you put a post-it note over it and pretend like it doesn't exist. Eventually the motor's going to blow, and then you've got a big old catastrophic problem. If you're post-it Pauling, your health conditions, and just taking Advil for your
Right.
headache, you're disrupting the colon further.
Mhm.
Eventually that's going to be, a catastrophic problem for you. And then it's like, well, Paul's been healthy all these years. I don't understand why now he's got colon cancer, and
Yeah.
it's, Paul was blindly, living, you know, covering up the warning light on the dash for years at that point. Mhm.
Right. Absolutely. Well, I want to ask one more question. I know we're running a little time that for us to cover for people who are probably asking this in their heads out there. So, like we talk about it, we're getting rid of the things that are causing the problem. That has to happen, right? There's no sense in rebuilding the gut lining if all of the heavy metals and the overgrowth is there. So
Right.
we get these things in a balance. We still want to rebuild the gut lining, right? So what is it? What are your go-tos to help somebody rebuild that gut lining? So what are the things that are the top of your mind? I mean, I think of dermatrophin, right,
Yeah. Yes.
as the protomorphogen, the protector, the thing that would
Hmm.
help to get that single layer of cells as
Right.
strong as it possibly could be. But what other things are you thinking of that someone would want to bring in as they're really getting themselves to the point where they're not on the precipice, right? They're getting as far back from the precipice.
Right. Right. And so, I mean, getting the bugs, I mean, it's that biofilm is kind of that secondary protection between that, as we talked about, the blood and the poop.
Right.
So that biofilm in there. So that's part of why we have that biofilm pro balance, to get that aspect good. GI stability also has that prebiotics in there. So those are a lot of that kind of that mucus layer, if you will, that gives us a little bit of protection before those toxins enter the bloodstream. Breaking the protein, breaking the foods down properly with the healthy, good stomach function starts there, right? Because the hydrochloric acid in the stomach takes those long proteins and starts breaking them into amino acids so that we can assimilate them more appropriately. So it starts there as well. Again, environment to keep that healthy. Minerals are the other thing too, as we mentioned. So that's your organic vegetables. Eating good, healthy organic vegetables are going to keep that strong. So prebiotics, for the protective mechanism in there, keeping the gut flora in balance ultimately is what that protection is. Mhm.
This sounds like a lifelong job, brother. I mean, is that
It is.
it is,
I
right?
mean, I love that. I love Barry Sears, old line from I think it was the 90s, you're only as good as your last meal,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, absolutely.
So,
Yeah, well, or your last 90 meals, right?
right,
Yeah,
right.
you
I
can't
mean,
get
you make
better.
one, yeah,
Yeah,
you make one meal choice, but one bad choice. Okay, that's a couple hours of consequence. But you keep making those over and over again, pretty soon you got the catastrophic problems. You got the weight concerns. Everybody blames weight as the trigger for inflammation, and weight for it's the choices that cause the weight that set
right.
up the inflammation, set up all the problems in the first place. So I mean, that kind of always drives me crazy in reading literature. Weight is the common cause of cancer. It's like, yeah.
It's
What do
a
they do to
common
get the extra
correlation.
weight? Yeah.
Well, I mean, well, that doesn't, then I need to jump in here and say, just for those who are listening, so I know that there are people listening who are thinking about doing a 21-day cleanse eating like I do. Every November 1st to the 21st, I hold sacred every year. And every meal is one that is contributing to health. And there's nothing coming in that is taking away from our health. And I think of it just like that. That's 63 opportunities if I'm eating 3 times a day, right? To get it right.
Hmm.
And
Nice.
these are all steps forward. And so I want to encourage anybody out there who's thinking or is having issues or all this sounds complicated to take a time like that and really just line up a bunch of good things in a row for 3 weeks and see the amazing things that your body can get back to doing as long as
Hmm.
you're removing all of this mishigash that's being dumped into your gut, right? All the
Yeah.
so
And the excuse me, the added value of that is now you've been living clean for 21 days. And now as you add foods back in, it's like, aha, that doesn't work, right?
right.
So
Yeah.
that's such a profound learning opportunity then because you've taken out a lot of the variables. And so now as you add foods back in, then that's empowering for a person, right? Because then it's not just Dr. V, it's not us telling them to not eat it, you silly fool, right? It's
Right.
like, oh, that's not worth it. Then they look at that cake and it's like disgusting. I don't want to eat it, And that stuff, I mean, I'm so, anti-sugar. I've been doing it for decades, that stuff looks repulsive to me. It's not even
Oh,
attractive
yeah.
because I know how it would make me feel. I know how it affects me.
Yep.
It's just, it doesn't even look enticing anymore,
Right.
so that's really the answer for those people that like, but I need my food X, my diet sodas, my dessert, my whatever it is, my coffee, right?
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah. Well, exactly. It's such a great way to reestablish a true relationship with food and what it can do for you. I'll never forget the
hmm
first time I did one with my younger brother. He said the first strawberry he had after doing that, it was the sweetest strawberry he ever ate because it
hmm
sets, right, how you actually experience food because you're not
Right.
hit by all of this chemistry that people are trying to overwhelm your brain with. So yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm gonna constantly for the rest of my life be encouraging people to dedicate a period of 3 weeks at least once a year. I mean, at the very least, to be able to do that,
hmm
give you a chance, right? At long,
Right.
you really need to do
Right,
that.
right, right. Yeah, I mean that kind of brings up the, as I often talk about, if the problem's there all the time, every day, start with the stuff you're eating every day, right? If it ebbs and flows, that's a little easier to figure out because then if you have to journal, journal. But if
Right,
what caused it to ebb.
right, exactly.
So so that's a starting point, kind of like the 21-day cleanse creates a great starting point because then you've leveled the playing field, you've got a lot of the typical triggers out. So now as you add them back in, pay close attention to how you're feeling because hey, I haven't had a headache for 21 days.
Right,
Now I just drank a milkshake and son of a gun, I have a headache.
right, right.
So,
Absolutely. Well, I
mhm.
know you got to get rocking and rolling. You got something you get to. So just to
Thank
kind of,
you.
I know we're all over the place as we usually are today, but for that colon headache, I think one of the things that I'm taking away, I want to repeat to everybody is that just because you have that whole headache, if there is a point that is poking out a little bit more, maybe it's right sided or left sided, start with those headaches and then get down to the colon headache because it can
Mhm.
be second, well, it can often be secondary, right, to the stomach
Yes.
or the gallbladder, what's going on down there. But also, just for anybody who's out there taking a probiotic, don't start in the colon from the
Mhm.
top down, right? That's probably one of
Yes.
the important things. And be aware there are a lot of things that are challenging that microbiome. So we should probably regularly be going back and taking a look at how do we bring it back to balance for sure.
Yes. And we've done some past podcast series on acromantia and
Mm-hmm.
L. reuteri.
Yep.
If you're looking at probiotics, those have fantastic value. I take them myself,
Yep.
but top down, right?
Right.
Create an
Right.
environment those are going to flourish. Otherwise, you're wasting your money ultimately taking stuff that you're feeding it. It's be kind of like taking an antibiotic and a probiotic, right? Everybody says take probiotics because you're taking them, but you're taking the good stuff and killing it with the. So have a healthy environment.
Exactly. All right. And any more questions, Dr. V's book is still available, right? You can always check it out,
Mhm.
take advantage. You set up a whole shrine to it in your corner, and I can't see it now.
Yeah, because
So
I stood up.
that's all right. We'll make sure I'll put a link to it below for anybody who wants to check out that book. It's an awesome book. Thank you all
Thank
for
you.
listening. Thank you for your comments. Thanks for your questions. Next week, we had a really, really interesting guest, actually, a naturopath who is going to give us some really cool information that I can't wait to share with you all. So hang
I'll
in
be there.
watching, and we'll see you in the next one.
Mhm.